We okay? The City of Plymouth City Council regular meeting for Thursday, January 12th, 2023 is now called to order. Coronavirus COVID-19 advisory pursuant to Assembly Bill AB 361, the meeting is being held in person and via teleconference / electronically. In-person participation by the public is permitted, and remote electronic public participation is also available by following the instructions to access Zoom. Members of the public participating electronically via Zoom and wishing to speak may do so during public comment by using the raised hand feature in the Zoom webinar. For those who are dialing into Zoom on your phone, use *9 to raise and lower your hand, and please use *6 to mute and unmute your phone. This meeting will be recorded. Call to order, roll call.
Councilmember White.
Here.
Councilmember McLaughlin.
I'm here.
Councilmember Kleinfelter.
Here.
Vice Mayor Sin.
Here.
Mayor Ackerman.
Here,
Thank you.
could we all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to God, of the United States, and to the republic which stands.
Invocation, we have none. Item number 2. Do we have approval of the City Council regular meeting agenda for tonight, January 12th, 2023?
I understand there's an emergency item that may require a vote before we vote on the agenda.
Madam Mayor, staff would like items number 9.1, the closed session item removed from the agenda, and also agenda item 7.1, the booster stuff pump station removed from the agenda for tonight, and also on a separate vote, we'll need the emergency item added to the agenda by a 2/3 vote.
Okay, thank you. Do we need to discuss the emergency, the proclamation? Or?
We don't discuss it now, but we should take a vote, and the council has to make certain findings for that vote. It's required 4 out of 5 council members to add it as an urgency item. And that basically just requires the council make the finding that there is an urgent need that has to be addressed, and that came to the attention after the agenda was posted. In this case, the emergency proclamation, which is what the resolution is for, was made by the mayor acting as director of emergency services on January 10th. It was 2 days ago, and that was obviously after the agenda was posted. And it's an emergency proclamation in view of the storms and everything that was reached. So that's the requisite reason for that. So if the council wants to make a council can have discussion, you can open up to public comment. In fact, you should open up to public comment and then take a vote on the motion to add it to the agenda as an emergency item.
Okay. Do we have any public comment on this item here in City Hall? No. Anybody on Zoom? Nobody, Dana?
No.
Okay, thank you. Would somebody like to make a motion on this?
I was going to bring up on the discussion part is if anyone's checking weather reports, we still got water coming. So
And we can discuss it when we get to the actual.
Yeah.
agenda. This is just to place it on the agenda.
okay, so you don't want to roll that into
No,
No.
we can't.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, does this go on the agenda, on the consent calendar or the regular? agenda? Regular, okay.
And I think this mayor, I think that you could provide direction where you'd like it on the agenda.
Yes. You could hear it at the beginning, in the middle.
I say we started at the beginning. If everybody's agreeable with that.
Okay, I made a motion to approve the agenda with pulling item 7.1 and the closed session item 9.
7.1.
Say I started with 7.1. Yeah.
7.1 and 9,
And you included the urgency item.
we just got all in one vote.
Oh, and then that's what I wanted, that's what I was asking, you know, when they're rolled together, and then I want to also add item 7. You don't have a following number on that. Does that cover all bases?
Yes.
Okay. I second it.
And I have a question, Frank.
Yeah.
Would the item of urgency need to be voted on separately since the required vote is different than to approve an agenda?
I mean, it can be if we said that there wouldn't be 4 votes, but I guess my sense is there probably would be, but yeah, that's a good question, but I think it probably can be voted all in one.
Roll call vote for the urgency item
And approval of the agenda.
and to
Approve the agenda.
approve the agenda with the additions and subtractions of items to the agenda.
Are we gonna take a roll call vote?
Vice Mayor Jim. We need a roll call vote. The Vice Mayor
First.
seconded the motion.
Motion and second.
Councilmember White,
Aye.
Councilmember McLaughlin,
Aye.
Councilmember Kleinfelder,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Sim,
Aye.
Mayor Ackerland.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes with 5 votes.
And the mayor identified where on, oh, she said right at the beginning, right? So right after public comment.
Right.
Okay.
Item number 3, public comment. Under provisions of the California Code, the City Council, citizens wishing to address the council for any matter not on the agenda may do so at this time by completing and submitting a speaker submittal form to the city clerk or following the COVID-19 advisory instructions noted on this agenda. Speakers will be called by the mayor at the point on the agenda when the item will be heard. Speakers are encouraged to keep comments to 3 minutes or less and to state name and community of residence, but doing so is not required. Under provisions of the California Government Code, the City Council is prohibited from materially discussing or taking action on any item not on the agenda unless it can be demonstrated to be of an emergency nature or an urgent need to take immediate action arose after posting the agenda. Do we have any public comments here at City Hall? Anybody at City Hall? Anybody on Zoom? Dana, do we have any hands raised?
None at this time.
Okay, we'll close public comments then. Number 4, presentations, proclamations, and appointments. 4.1, Planning Commission appointment as a result of the 2022 City Council elections. And do we want to open that for discussion?
Would,
Council.
Madam Mayor, would you like me to take the lead on this?
Yeah.
Or how would you like to run it?
Yes, please.
Mayor, members of the council, it's being new to the city council, this has truly been one of the, I guess, the most important decisions or biggest decisions I've been a part of thus far. I want to really just express my appreciation to Deputy City Clerk De La Torre and City Manager Margaret Roberts for their work and their support and helping us to get the word out to the community about filling this planning commission vacancy. We were fortunate to have 3 applicants, 3 highly qualified, very interested, very passionate people about our community apply for this opening. I had the distinct pleasure of sitting and meeting with each of the individuals, talking about the pros and cons, the desires, what they'd like to see in the city, and all of them bring an excellent resume to the table. With the support of the mayor and the city manager, I've been in communication with all 3 candidates, so this announcement tonight won't be news to the individuals going forth, but they've been made aware prior to it being announced here in a public meeting. It is truly my honor to bring forth to the city council and appoint Tom Mickelson as a planning commissioner for the city of Plymouth. I believe he's there with you tonight, and I'm truly heartbroken that I'm not able to be there and introduce him in person, as I'm dealing with some kind of bug and you truly don't want me in the room with you. Tom comes to us as a resident of the city of Plymouth after retiring from the city of Fremont Police Department after a long and distinguished career. As a manager within the police department, one of his key roles was being engaged and working closely with the planning department of the city and representing not only the police department interest, but the community's interest as part of the planning department and the planning commission. So Tom brings to us a wealth of knowledge and skills in this particular area that we need as a city to work through our planning elements as we continue to face growth, proposals of growth, proposals of change, proposals of progress within our community. I truly believe that Tom's experience, not only within local government, but with planning and engagement with local chambers of commerce, community outreach, among others, is going to make him a tremendous asset to our community. So it's truly my honor to recognize and name Tom as our planning commissioner for the city of Plymouth.
Okay, thank you, Mike. And Tom, you want to just give us a wave? So anybody who might not things together. Welcome. Do we have any other appointments to planning commission? Okay, all right, thank you. Item number 5, the consent calendar items. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar items.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to request we pull item 5.5 for separate consideration, and with that modification, I'll second the motion.
Technically, he's amending the motion, so if somebody wants to propose a first, or if he wants, I don't think he really needs to amend the motion, but he's not seconding the motion as presented. He's making an amendment to it. So if Councilmember Kleinfelder wants to withdraw and restate it first and meet the second, that's probably the simplest way.
Do we need a separate vote on removing the item, or any council member can remove an item?
Any council member.
That's what I'm thinking. I will amend my motion to remove item number 555 and have it agendized just after the new agenda item, the proclamation, which is probably, if I'm reading right, Marianne, you can correct me, one would be 7.1 and one would be 7.2.
Madam Mayor, if I may, I believe just pulling this item just for a brief comment, and then it would be heard as part of the consent calendar. It would just be taken up separately as part of the consent calendar.
Okay, so does somebody have to second? Councilmember?
Yeah, somebody should, and I just want to do a point of clarification. Even if, once it's pulled, even if it's a quick discussion, it's technically still a regular agenda item.
Right.
So we treat it whatever word we want, but it's going to be 7 whatever. I just want to say that for the clarity of the body. But any council member can second the motion that Councilmember Kleinfelder just made to accept the consent approve the consent calendar with the exception of move title 5.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded.
Roll call vote. Councilmember White.
Aye.
Councilmember McLaughlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Kleinfelter.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Sim.
Aye.
Mayor Ackerman.
Aye. Item number 6, public hearings, we have none. Regular agenda items. I would like to first discuss the proclamation of the existence of a local emergency. Do we need to have a staff report on that?
Small. We have put this item on the agenda so that in case we have flooding or any type of monetary damage, we are eligible for reimbursement through the state or federal funds. In case there was a purchase that needs to be made over my signing authority outside of a council meeting, I can make that emergency purchase to be brought to the council at the next council meeting without having to call a special meeting to make that purchase. For those reasons, staff recommended that the mayor declare a state of emergency. Sutter Creek and Jackson had already declared an emergency as well as the county. Staff is recommending ratification of the mayor's proclamation.
I'll make a motion to approve the declaration proclamation. The existing local
Mike, hang on just a second. Do we have any council comments, questions?
I do. I don't remember getting the email that this proclamation had been signed or declared. If I did, I'm sorry for overlooking it. If I didn't, it would have saved me a lot of research in government codes and reading about 10 cities' proclamations. So it would be really good communication levels.
I have requested that be emailed out to the council, and I do apologize. I thought that had gone out to you as soon as I had sent it out to the mayor. And that hadn't been communicated with you. And
I was right in the middle of writing this enormous email that came through.
I apologize, Councilor.
Any other council member questions, comments?
Oh, I do have. I had a question regarding many of the cities made their proclamation and their resolution retroactive. And my question with that is, have we had any that we know of additional staff time? And is there a potential that we have damage that we don't know of yet that would benefit from ours being retroactive? It could go back to December 30th.
We have had overtime for public works staff. And I know we have incurred at least $40,000, if not $60,000 worth of damage to date from the weather.
So I have an additional question for Frank. If we change the date on the proclamation, is that a problem for the resolution?
It's not we can change the date of the proclamation, but the proclamation itself already covers the winter storm event. I mean, the idea of the emergency declaration is because it's emergency proclamation, you never actually know when it's going to happen. So the idea is once it happens, you enter it. And I think under the specific ESA, the Emergency Services Act, the state will grant, I think it's up to 30 days retroactive based on the declaration. So
I just wanted to be clear because many of the cities didn't state the date. And I wanted us to be covered because I was sure we had expenses.
I understand you say that the city incurred like $40,000 to $60,000 damage to gates.
To date,
To date. What about private citizens in the city? Have anybody reached out? As I presume this covers citizens as well.
the only citizens that I know of that have reached out to Public Works are people who have complained that their drainage isn't working correctly. But in Public Works responding out, most of the citizens had placed rocks or other items in their drainage, which caused the problem for their drainage not draining properly. Public Works cleared out the drainage and it proceeded to then drain properly. So after that, we haven't received any complaints.
Anything?
So we got storms coming. We're not done yet. We still got more coming, so.
And I can open this to public comment now, right? Okay, I'd like to open this to public comment. Anybody here at City Hall have any questions, comments? Anybody on Zoom? Nobody's saying, okay, I'll close public comments. And I would entertain a motion at this time.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the declaration proclamation, the existence of a local emergency as recommended by the city manager.
I think we need to use the resolution number and refer to the resolution in the motion.
Happy to amend. I make a motion to approve the declaration proclamation, the existence of emergency, including the approval of resolution 2023-07.
I'll second that.
Roll call vote. Councilmember White,
Aye.
Councilmember McLaughlin,
Aye.
Councilmember Kleinfelter.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Sim.
Aye.
Mayor Ackerman.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And unless there are any objections, can we go back to 5.5, which now would be 7.1 to 7.2. The adoption of resolution 2023-01, AB 361, renewal of virtual meetings. And I'll open it to discussion amongst the council. Mike?
Madam Mayor, thank you. I request this item to be pulled just for one specific point. I think having the ability to do meetings virtually, with this COVID emergency in place, that it waives the Brown Act in terms of needing to be in a public place for it. However, I venture to see that virtual participation will probably be an ongoing reality in our existence. And with that, I think it's important that for us to consider in looking at a policy that any elected, appointed, or city staff that are attending a public meeting in their official capacity need to have the cameras on for the duration of the public meeting. The public deserves to see us, to be able to interact with us. And I know just over the past several months, there's been instances, certainly one-off instances, but we'd just like to see a consistent practice to where we're publicly available, at least if by picture, if nothing else.
I don't know that that's part of the resolution tonight. I think that we could agendize that for another meeting. But Frank is the expert.
Yeah, we can't that's obviously a council decision. Wants to establish policy to that effect. Because this is the council's meeting, therefore it's the council's policy. And obviously if it wants to do that, wants to codify that in any way, it has to come back to something the council can vote on. I think that but it's a matter of just, hey, I would like the council to do this. then that can be stated, it can be requested, and that discussion's over. If it's, I would like us to do this, and I would like us to codify that, then that will come back for the council tonight. And so all the council could give at most is direction at the end of the meeting for future agenda items with respect to that, or indicate its preference now, and we'll make sure we get it at the end of the meeting. But yeah, we can't take any formal action on that.
Any other council questions or discussion items?
I think, Mike is 100% correct that this is not going anywhere. This is the new way of the future. Is to have virtual meetings. I do think about in the past with some of our council members that we did have on council. And I don't want to sound smart out about it or whatever, but I don't think that they would know how to turn on the camera, be turning their phones. So I just want us to keep that in consideration.
Smart aleck.
And I agree too, that the preference would be that people do have their cameras on during the meetings. If I could ask Frank, if you don't mind me asking, what's the anticipated status of AB 361?
Well, I'm glad you asked. End of February. So we're coming on the end of it. That being said, there'll be some decisions the council will have to make probably before that, and probably one of the February meetings, as far as to what extent we still want to use video conferencing as a courtesy to the public. And there will be instances, even if AB 361 goes away under the new legislation, that there may be an instance where, and probably Councilmember McLaughlin's situation tonight would probably qualify, where he could still not appear in person, but could appear remotely. But those rules are a little more onerous, in fact, a lot more onerous than the current rules. And it requires getting permission from the council at the beginning of the meeting. It requires having certain qualified reasons. And those reasons have to be, and you can only use so many reasons per year. So it's a lot more onerous. So the point is, AB 36 going away, there still may be a possibility for video conferencing for council members on rare occasions in the future, but the council will have the opportunity to decide if it still wants to make the video conference available, Zoom conference, just for the general public. So it's probably good, as we're getting into this, it's probably good to agendize this as a future discussion as part of that item as well.
That's what I was gonna mention, is that if we are going to have the discussion because of the end of the bill, that seemed like an appropriate time if we were going to adopt something for the future, and that could be a part of that discussion, if that's okay if that answers Mike's question.
Yeah, absolutely. Based on needing to have an update, an upcoming conversation, then I recommend we just defer. So with that, I'd recommend make a motion to approve item 5.5 as included in the consent calendar.
Do I need to open this to public comment?
Yes.
Being it's now on the agenda, okay. So hang on, Mike. Is there anybody here at City Hall who would like to make a comment on this item? Is there anybody on Zoom who would like to make a comment?
No one at this
No.
time.
Okay, thank you. It's closed to public comment. And Councilmember McLaughlin had made a motion. I interrupted. Do we have a second?
I'll second his motion to pass resolution number 2023-01.
Roll call vote. Councilmember White, Councilmember McLaughlin,
Aye.
Councilmember Kleinfelder,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Sims.
Aye.
Mayor Ackerman.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, item 7.2. Staffing assessments by city manager. And do we have a staff report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Before you is a staffing assessment that was completed by myself regarding current staffing levels and previous promotions or title changes that were given by the previous city manager without job classifications in place. And so what I'm looking for tonight is some direction, and I'd like to bring this item back at the following meeting for approval. And moving forward with that, I have multiple job classifications that I'm looking for approval on. And that would be the Public Works Superintendent, which is currently held by Selby Beck. And the Administrative Analyst position, which is held by Dana Knight. The accountant 1, 2, and it needs to include Senior Accountant, which is currently held by Joyce, and I'm not going to attempt her last name because I can never pronounce it correctly, Joyce in Finance. And the other 2 classifications I'm requesting is an operator in training, which would be one of our current public works employees who would be training to take over as a wastewater treatment plant operator once he gets the appropriate amount of hours and passes the state certification test. So we would continue to have our own operator rather than contract for services. And the second position would be an account clerk, which would be a entry-level position in order to separate duties in the finance department, which I found to be a major red flag for me, that there's only one person and there's no separation of duties. With the current retirement of the chief wastewater treatment plant, we have AWA, which is our backup operator, who has agreed to train our public works maintenance employee. They are our backup provider, and they've agreed to work as our backup until our public works employee can train and get the hours and take the test, if that's what the council so chooses. Also in my staff report is the planning director position, which a previous city manager changed from a consulting firm to a city staff position. My suggestion is to reverse that and remove that as a city staff position and take it back to either a firm or a person from a firm, but that it be a consultant type position. I don't think that it's necessary to have someone on staff. I think we are better served if we can draw from an agency and get a multitude of knowledge. The other is that we have an assistant city manager, finance director position, which is currently approved in the budget. I don't believe we need that position in-house either. I do think we need a finance manager type position or a finance director type position, but I believe that can be done by outsourcing either with another agency within the county or on a part-time basis with a retired finance director, some of that nature at the council's choosing for direction on that. So really what I want is some guidance from the council on their preferences on how to move forward, especially with those big ticket items on those outsourcing of those positions. Bringing in those 2 new positions, the operator in training, which for the remainder of this year would be a cost savings because our retired wastewater treatment plant employee salary was much higher than the operator in training salary is. We would backfill the maintenance worker position with a maintenance 1 position, which would be a cost savings because the person going into the operator in training is a maintenance worker too. So there would be additional cost savings there. And then the account clerk again is a entry-level position But there is tremendous cost savings from the assistant city manager / finance director position, which we haven't had filled, which that position was budgeted at $120,417 for the year. So that's a huge cost savings there. So I'm looking for some direction from the council tonight on those items so that I can bring it back to you next meeting with salaries wrapped with it and a more comprehensive staff report with everything all packaged as a neat package for you.
Thank you. Council questions, comments,
Yeah,
discussion? Go ahead.
I like, the idea of the AWA training, an operator. But my other question is once that person becomes an operator, do they train another operator? I don't know, I kind of like a backup plan on everything else, and I can see someone becoming an operator and getting the idea of, oh, what's Sacramento paying, what's,
That's what we always do is train.
Yes.
I know.
That typically seems to happen with small agencies, is you train somebody and then that person sees the grass greener on the other side and goes. But I believe once they have a certain amount of hours under their belt, they can then train other people. But I will verify and have that in the next report.
I have a question. Are the previous chief wastewater treatment operator who's retired, yeah, how long had that person been in the position? Approximately. Okay,
I don't know.
I know quite a while.
Okay.
That's, yeah.
okay.
How long is the gentleman who's gonna be training been on the job? Has he been doing something else, or has he been an assistant to the gentleman you're talking about?
He's been a public maintenance worker.
Okay, so it's all new to him at this point.
Right, he's been going out to the plant and Greg was showing him different components and different things to do and showing him how to read things. But being able to actually have hands-on, he cannot do until he gets an operator in training certificate from the state, allowing him to actually touch the buttons.
How long has it been here?
He has been here,
He's not new.
he's not new.
Okay. But it sounds like Greg has been here over 10 years.
I believe so, yes.
So, I mean, that's great.
And it would take quite a few hours, quite a while to attain like a certificate 4 level, which I think our facility requires a 3 or 4. So that we have them in training for a long time.
Our facility actually only requires a level 1 certificate. Which surprised me as well. And
Experience.
the employee we have in mind is willing to get that and willing to also go beyond that if the city would choose to continue to train him.
Well, that would come in very important if we have to expand the sewer plant facility, which is likely in the next 10 years. My other comment is, I don't know how you did it, and it may never happen again, but you made all my dreams come true.
How is that?
Yeah.
No, I mean, just what do you mean?
I sent an email not knowing that this was going to be the staff report, and everything that I have requested is included in this staff report. So it's mind reading again.
I have a question about the public works superintendent. That's currently Selby, right? Is he retiring? Is he
He works part-time
gonna remain there for a while?
for now,
So
yes.
you're not looking for a person.
No, absolutely not.
I think Selby has a home in Plymouth as long as he wants one.
Exactly.
Councilmember McLaughlin, do you have any questions or comments on this agenda item?
I think just, the one item, I mean, first of all, Margaret, in a very short period of time so far as a city manager, not to mention the holidays in the middle, I think you've done an exceptional job of bringing this to us and really checked all the boxes of what we need to know. I think for me, the one thing that stands out just a bit troubling is that positions were created and filled without council action or council appropriation of fund to fill those positions. I'm glad we're going back and dotting our I's and crossing our T's, but definitely not a practice I would like to see us do going forward. And I don't anticipate that to be an issue, period, just to be clear.
That assumption would be correct. But I actually think the positions were brought to council, just the position job classifications never brought back for approval. To be fair.
And I have a question. I'm sorry, Mike, was there more?
I was just going to say, well, that's great news to hear that it did come to council. Thank you for the clarification.
And then I have a question on the staff recommendations, the bulleted item that says authorize the mayor to sign a contract amendment with AWA for the additional work for the remaining fiscal year up to $40,000. Is that something we can kind of pull out of all these recommendations and make a motion tonight if the council agrees? Or is it seems like maybe some of these other items are items where we would want to give direction? And it's just a learning question for me.
I don't have a contract amendment with AWA yet. I haven't had time to get that down. I will bring that back in through contract form.
Okay, awesome, thank you. I'm going to open this for public comment. Anybody here at City Hall? Anybody would like to make a comment, questions? Nobody here at City Hall. Anybody on Zoom? Is there anybody on Zoom who'd like to comment? No one did. Okay, there's no comments from the public, so I'll close this to public comment. And now we'll look for council direction on this. So what are the wishes of the council?
I think the summary is, the consensus is that the council agrees to most of the staff or all of the staff recommendations, that we direct staff to bring back with the more information and the budget amounts, the salary range. Is that a consensus piece?
It is on me.
I like that.
Okay, so moving on to agenda item 7.3, the proposed budget for 2023. And if we could please have a staff report.
So in your packets, you have basically the 2022-23 budget, even though the years have gone. We had an interim finance director who did the bulk of the work for staff. A lot of the numbers went unchanged. Some of the numbers changed drastically. Some of the numbers went up. Some of the numbers went down. Some can be explained and some cannot. For example, the TOT, Vice Mayor Sim asked me a question about TOT and why has it gone down so much. I don't have an answer to that question yet, but it is definitely on my radar to ask and have an answer for at the next meeting. Again, I'm not asking for action on this item tonight, but I am asking for your questions, comments, concerns, and any direction from this that you have for me to come back with. The general fund looks to be in about the same shape as it was previously. The previous year. And it appears to be relatively stable. Sorry, I'm trying to get to that page.
23.
As you can see, the dollar amounts, the requested budget this year is actually lower than the budgeted amount for 21-22. However, the projected actuals is a little bit higher, and that's due to the increase in the economy and inflation and the rising costs in just doing business. We did get a little bit less of property tax and in lieu of motor vehicle fees this year. Not a lot, but about 1,500 less. We did get more in state and federal grant funds. We are looking at more in revenues in terms of franchise fees. Councilmember Kleinfelder asked if we were getting all of our franchise fees that the city deserves. I didn't have an answer to that either. That's on my list to make sure that we go back and I find out exactly which companies, not just which category of company. So for instance, it says propane, are we getting franchise fees from both propane companies that deliver in town, or are we just getting from the one? So those are questions that I need to go back and look into. The funds that I am concerned about are water and sewer. And a lot of this, I believe, has to do with the fact that AWA increased the rates and we've not passed on those rates to our ratepayers. And until we can do a Prop 218 study, we are going to continue to be in a deficit position in those two funds. For grant funding, I noticed right away that we have more grants than what are listed. And then it was pointed out that they're not all listed. So I have to go back and look and see what's missing and see if I can determine the other grants that are missing and make sure that they have their own fund so that it's easily picked out, so that anybody looking at our budget can look at grant funds and see what we're receiving and what we're expending from those grants. I have not seen a capital improvement plan, so I can't answer questions regarding the capital improvement fund, and I've not been able to sit down with our public works director and go over any of that since the budget came out. So I apologize, I don't have any answers for capital projects. I've had questions from different council members. Do you want me to go through those questions? Do you want me to answer questions you have? How would you like to go through that?
I think we all like our questions answered. If
We want to state them ourselves so they're in the record that way.
I think, do you want to go first, Valerie?
Well, mine's long.
Well, maybe yours will address questions the rest of us have.
Some of them have been addressed. The franchise fees is woefully inaccurate. The $1,300 for propane is a red flag right there. Only $1,300 for the year in the budget for a franchise fee. Not to mention all of the other companies that are doing business and providing services in the city of Plymouth. Telephone, broadband, cable TV, whatever it is. We need to look at whether or not those should be required to have a franchise agreement and recoup those funds. The TOT, the way it was listed in the budget, I had a bit of an issue with, and I know this is going on previous budget formatting. But I would like to see all TOT funds clearly, shown, instead of having the ones that go in directly into the general fund, just absorbed by the general fund and not identified as TOT. Unless you are looking at what you have year to year at TOT, then you're looking at a general fund and you're funding things that may be at risk. Because if we go into a very recessionary, and I've said this for 4 years, if we ever go into a highly recessionary period, then the TOT will be markedly reduced. And if we've staffed up always to a level that all of that is being supported by TOT funds, then we're not being responsible to our own staff. I had several questions about capital improvement plans, and it was, to my impression, that, and I would hope that we would agendize that before we approve the budget, if it could be on the same agenda. But the council has to approve capital improvement plans. And those capital improvement plans should be approved before we approve a budget that says we've funded a capital improvement plan. Well, if the public will think that we did our job, and we haven't. So I'm sure I had more. The emails were quite long. I did have, one of my other questions was about the wholesale water collection, and it's listed at 0 for selling wholesale water.
That should have been 9,400. I did get an answer for that.
Okay. Thank you, Margaret.
Keith, do you have any questions, comments?
Mostly my comments, and I see that Mary's on Zoom with us also. So thank you, Mary. Thank you, Margaret, for, I actually was quite shocked. I understand. I always kind of look at these as rough drafts. And for the amount of time that Margaret's been here and I got this much information, I was like, oh, holy smokes. Oh, yeah, I can't be too hard on this situation, even though we got to ask the questions. I was like, it's a lot more than we've gotten in years past. Yeah, so thank you on that. And I know that there's going to be questions,
Most of the numbers came from Mary, not Margaret. So Margaret did the text.
Well, thank you, Mary.
Councilmember McLaughlin, any questions, comments?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, talk about an onboarding exercise for our new city manager in having to produce a budget mid-year. But both Mary and Margaret, excellent job, and thank you for bringing this forward to us. Many of the comments that Councilmember Kleinfelder brought forth, I agree with. I think we may find ourselves in a position on this one of needing to adopt a budget so that we actually have a spending plan in place, as we are already should be on the path of beginning the development of the fiscal year 24 budget starting here in the next couple of weeks. So, city manager, we'll be looking for your recommendation and guidance on some of that. Some of this may just be a stopgap measure. I think for me, a couple of things going forth. I agree that I'd like to see the greater budget detail and line items. I think that's an important piece of producing government transparency in outlining what's actually our spending plan and where is the money actually going. That, recognizing time is very short on this piece. I don't expect it for this particular budget, but I would like to see us work in that direction. For me, I would like to see some more information on our water and sewer debt, right? What is the balance on the bond or the loan? And when will this loan sunset? That in the door knocking during the campaign, water rates is one of the biggest pieces brought up, and the vast majority, well into the 90 plus percentile, don't know that there's actually a loan debt built in to our water bill. And so how do we create some of that transparency and bring some of that piece forth? I love the fact that you recommended a fee study. I would like to throw on the table for consideration as we move forward of making this a very comprehensive fee study, not just assessing and doing a nexus for our existing fees, but let's bring in a firm to do a comprehensive assessment of fees that are charged in the area that are typical fees. We don't need to adopt them all as council, but it would be important for us to at least know what's out there and as we look forward in the sustainability of our city. I too am concerned about the TOT. I know there's been a lot of discussion about, switching from a transient occupancy to a long-term and the potential impacts on the city. This is obviously a much bigger conversation than a budget, but it directly relates back to our budget, significantly. One of the big questions that I raised is the question of CFDs, or the community facilities districts. I know one exists for Zinfandel Ridge, and as I understand that, maybe the only one. I know there's a challenge in trying to run that down. And Margaret, I know you're working diligently at doing that, and I look forward to seeing that information. Status of audit from the previous fiscal year. As I understand, it was completed, but there were some terms missed, or some certain aspects missed. I would like to see it, come forth as soon as possible, just as part of our bigger fiscal exercise and reconciliation. I would really like to see that piece. And the last piece, I just, I don't know if it would be how it presented, but having it come back to council and look at our contract for water with AWA. I'm not discrediting anything they're doing. They provide us a great service. My concern is, at least on appearance in the first little bit, it's almost as though we have some duplication of government and however this contract is structured, that, they do a Prop 218 study to determine water rates, and then we have to do our own Prop 218 study to determine what we're going to charge based off of what they determine they need to charge. And, is there a better way of doing business, right? So we're both spending money to do the same thing, to provide the same commodity to our residents. And so, maybe the contract is as tight and clean and as great as it could ever be. But I know for me, I would certainly like to learn more and some of the nuances for it. And based on the fact that we're going to be doing a fee study on it, now may be the time. Again, Mary and Margaret, I just want to commend you on pulling this budget together, and I look forward to seeing it come back to council. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Sid?
Yes, under the water fund on page 26, I see there's a debt service principal of $51,000. I presume that's for the pipeline that the bond that we're paying off, with a $96,000 annual interest payment, which is about $160,000. I think I heard we paid around $10 million for that pipeline, and maybe look into, as Councilmember McLaughlin had mentioned, how long is this debt going to go on? It's a fair amount of money, and I presume this is paying off the pipeline. So it'll be interesting to see how much longer this bond is going to be in effect. Most of this type of bond typically lasts 30 years. That's something I look at. Yeah, I get a lot of questions from Zinfandel Ridge about the community facility district that we've set up a number of years ago, and I can't find the money anywhere on the budget. I've been told that it's been scattered through various funds, and that may or may be true, but it'd be nice to know how much money is in there, because at some point that money is gonna have to go forth to pay for improvement on streets and curbs and gutters and et cetera. So it'd be really nice to know how much money they have and where is it. I can't find it in this budget anywhere.
If I can help, Frank's gonna have to jump in. But the community's facility district, the council is actually the board for that district and should have occasionally convened meetings with an agenda and a budget of what's available in that community facilities district. We've never had a meeting or an agenda item regarding that, and I don't want to go too much in the weeds because it's off subject, but I wanted to answer the question if possible.
Yeah, as far as the CFD, there's obviously a community facilities districts under the Melrose Act. And then you have community service districts, which are special districts. Community facilities district is just a tax district for special taxes that are levied in the community. There's no board or body that's over the CFD as opposed to like a CSD where you have community service districts. So I think that may be part of it. That being said, the money that goes into the district and what it's been used on, those are all obviously valid questions.
Frank, just a quick question. Shouldn't the CFD money, that should not be commingled with general fund or others, right? It needs to be accounted for separately and independently.
Yeah, so yeah, in the formation of the CFD, both the intention to form it and then when it's the resolution of formation, it sets forth what the services are for. It would be best practices to have a separate line item. That being said, special taxes, even though they are special taxes, they can be used to supplement general fund type expenditures, police, fire, whatever is listed. It has to be used for purposes in the resolution when the CFD was formed. So it should have its own fund within the budget.
So I just want to echo what has already been brought up is that I too am at a loss as far as the fund for the Zimbabwe Ridge CFD and how much has gone in and how much has gone out and an accounting of the money. I do have a couple really quick questions and you guys will have to indulge me on this. Looking at page 17, the personnel, it says development coordinator. Do we currently have that position filled?
We do not, and I don't plan to either.
Okay,
That'll be removed.
okay. And then somebody's gonna have to explain to me, what is the difference between a building official and a building inspector?
It's hierarchy. Building official, your CBO, your the director level, so to speak, and then inspector is somebody that works for the CBO. In like in a larger city, for example, the CBO is the one that is the final say on all things building related, but the inspector is one of the many people that actually go out and check to inspect. So it's more just a building, it's more a hierarchy than anything.
Okay, and do we currently have two separate people for those positions?
We have two part-time, we have one part-time that works the majority of the time, and then we have a second one who backs him up when he's on vacation.
Got it. Okay. And then, shoot, I lost the page, but it had to do with the COPS fund. And I noticed a big increase. Page 30. Under expenses for other frontline law enforcement requests, there's an amount of $214,000 plus. I don't understand what that's about. And if you can't answer that now, I can wait. Any other council question? I'm sorry, go ahead, Jordan.
Under the water fund, under revenue, I don't know the difference between water, community charge and water service charge. The community charge is $304,000. The water service charge is $228,000. I don't know what those two are. I can wait for that answer too.
The list, the service charge is itemized on the billing every month. As I think it's $35 per meter bill per household, not per month. So that would be service charge.
So the service charge would be the pipe and the sewer plant. No,
The service charge used to be considered a meter fee, and it went into a trust fund, a meter fund that could only be utilized for replacement of meters. It got too large. We actually in the 90s gave some money back to residents, but then it was changed. The name of it was changed and the formatting of it was changed to a service charge, so that was basically recouping the costs of providing the bill and reading the meters.
Anything else? And the commodity is water actually used.
I actually have a question, and it's kind of, I don't want to say off basis, but it goes back to what you were asking about. And I'm gonna ask Councilman Kleinfelder, because she has quite more history than the rest of us. How long is that contract with the sheriff's department?
The contract with the sheriff's department doesn't have an expiration date on it. And it is good until either party provides 30 days notice or cancels the contract for cause. I asked for all of our contracts to be reviewed for the last 2 years now. Sheriff Redmond, it was an election year.
Yes, we had many discussions, yes, about this.
Did not want to really dive into the contract, but it is something that does need to be addressed. It looks like it was typed on an Underwood typewriter in 1965. So as a lot of our old contracts do. So we need to address them, amend them as appropriate. One of the problems with that is it's going to cost us money. We've been provided services at the same level for over a decade. So we do have to address that issue at some point.
The current contract was signed in 2005. I'm meeting
Okay, but it was probably still printed on in 1965.
with, certainly, I'm meeting with the sheriff on the 17th.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'd like to open this up for public comment. Is there anybody here in City Hall who would like to make public comment on this agenda item? Everybody's quiet. Anybody on Zoom who would like to make public comment on this item?
No raised hands.
Okay, no raised hands, so I'll close public comment. And if there's no other council.
Mayor, can I just have one I missed in my notes, and that would just be the unrestricted fund balance of where we stand as a city for our reserves. If we could include that either part of the staff report or in the budget itself, would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks for catching.
I did. Can I cover one more item?
Absolutely.
I'd like to cover the cost of living increase that I'm requesting from staff. I have requested an 8.8% cost of living increase for staff, which is the West Region CPI that we have used in years past. I went back 4 years and looked, and that's what they've used the last 4 years. There were other agencies in the county that gave that 8% range to their staff. But I just wanted it out there that that's what I'm requesting. I think it's fair. Staff has been working very hard, very diligently, at least since I've been here. They have worked overtime when I've asked them to work overtime. They've come in early, they've stayed late. I would like it retroactive to when the budget should have gone into effect. And when the council gives their feedback, if they could address that as well, so we can incorporate that throughout the budget if that's the council's direction.
Margaret, I liked that you did highlight and note the proposed cost of living in the budget readout. The only question I would have is if we go retroactively to the beginning of the cycle, would the 8.1 or 8.7 be what was proposed or listed in the CPI at that time? So we might have to do an average.
The 8.8 is what it was June
Okay,
of
that
22.
would be my only question.
Any other council comments, questions? Would the council like to give direction to staff? And thank you for all of this, and thank you, Mary.
You're very welcome.
I think I think we've had good communication, and that Mary and Margaret both have a lot of direction from each of the council members about what they would like to see. And if we bring it back again, the only thing I would strongly suggest is that we do the capital improvement plans.
And I'm sorry, I did have one more comment, and I think somebody brought this up, but I would like to see more line items on some of these expenditures. And I can put that in email.
I think that's a big one that we're gonna take away from this. That's something that I would say for the last 3 years, we've been saying line item, line item, line item. So, yeah.
And maybe with a little more description as to what they are. Some are really vague and hard to, if you work with it every day, you know what they all are, but if you don't, it's kind of a mystery.
The line items might not come in this for the remaining of the 6 months, but they will definitely be in the next school year's budget. I have trouble finding things with these descriptions, so.
Fair enough.
With all of the direction, I'm sure council members will go home and say, oh, I should have asked that, or I should have asked that. Can we do like a deadline of Friday for emailing any additional comments? Is that?
That give you enough time?
I'll even go as late as Tuesday
Okay.
of next week. That would be great.
I
Okay.
think that's more than fair, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, moving on to item 7.4, 2018 Parks Bond Act per capita grant. And do we have a staff report for that?
This item came up because we had a notice of exemption that was due, and I had no idea we had this grant outstanding. So I need to find out from the council if they want to continue with this grant, which is what's a 50-50 split between park improvements with Lodge Hill and the Sharkey across the street. And we would need to do a notice of exemption and then file with the recorder's office a deed restriction that would expire in 2038 for those property locations.
Council discussion?
Well, would this need to be done by motion, Frank, or just direction?
Probably just direction or consensus unless we get into very specific details, but I think it's more about green light, red light.
Okay, I have a green light.
I have a green light. Anybody else have any questions or comments? And Mike McLaughlin,
Green light.
green light.
I don't like losing out on any money, so green light.
Green light. Okay. And I'd like to open this to public comment. Does anybody here in City Hall have comments, questions regarding item 7.4? Okay, everybody's pretty quiet here. How about on Zoom? Any comments? Any raised hands, Dana?
Not at this time.
Okay, so I'll close this to public comment, and I think staff knows the direction we have to go. And then finally, item 7.5, Nova Coast IT Services change order for $9,975. And would you like to give us a staff report?
Yes, please. So Nova Coast is our contract IT service provider, and we have a contract with them. However, I was unable to find it. I was assured we had one. It was a 2-year contract, and it was for a substantial amount of money. $14,103.52 was used of that as of the date of this staff report. They're requesting an additional $9,975, which will provide an additional 57 hours of support to staff for IT services, which should move us quite a bit towards the end of, well, I'm gonna say for at least a couple months. I'm not even gonna go past that. I don't know how we came to this contract. I could not find a staff report that brought it to council. The previous finance director signed the contract.
We should add that council has declared that city managers and interim city managers have the authority to sign contracts up to $5,000.
Correct. This was substantially over that.
Yes.
They have provided good service since I've been here. I've called, they've answered. I mean, I've not had to ever leave a message. He's answered the phone every time I've called. When I've sent an email, he's responded within a couple hours to my emails. They're very responsive. They keep our servers up and running. I am requesting that the council approve the $9,975 at this time until I can do further research and get to the bottom of how we got to this point. I just didn't have time to do that before we ran out of IT money and we needed something, and then we were stuck.
There's been quite a few times, it didn't happen to, well, it probably happened to me once because Doug sent me an email. I don't use the City of Plymouth email, and they haven't forwarded any of those emails to the email that I do use. They did get my email on the website. But my point is several times, it's happened to Keith when he was the mayor, it's happened to several council members that have had their City of Plymouth email hacked or utilized, cloned. And is there anything that they can answer questions about what protections have been provided to prevent that? Otherwise, it's a necessary cost, so.
Yeah, I was gonna bring up the same thing that, have I asked you for money yet? Because I use it, mine are always about asking for credit cards. So, but I completely stopped using my City of Plymouth email. I stopped. And matter of fact, I told Rex multiple times when he was our city manager to get rid of that email, or, yeah, I'm not using it. So, that's my only beef with any of it.
Yeah, if I may on that, just a few years ago, there's what was known as the San Jose decision in terms of the California Public Records Act. And if you're not as a public employee or a public officer, if you're using your private email, you may be subjecting your private email accounts to a PRA if somebody were to request public record information. So just having lived in the trenches and seen some of these requests, I may if with whatever scope, may advise you to use the City of Plymouth just so your other one doesn't get tagged.
Oh, Mike, I totally understand, but if you want to pay my credit card bills or buy me a new drum set from Sweetwater, that's not all you're gonna see.
But yeah, if only they would, correct?
Yeah.
And I'll chime in on that, Mike, as well, because I don't think a lot of people realize that if they are texting amongst themselves on their private phones or texting a message to the city manager or anyone, those are already subject to Public Records Act.
My question is typically with a contract of this amount for this type of service, would a RFP need to have gone out, or should an RFP have gone out?
I think it should have.
That's a good question and a great answer.
Can Nova Coast provide you a copy of their contract that we can't find? I presume they have them someplace.
I'm sure they can. I didn't ask it. I wanted to try to find those first.
Sure.
I'm sure it's here somewhere.
Yeah.
So those emails that I get from you, call me regarding an urgent matter. Yeah.
You know what, I admire the Ackerman household and everything, but if it's an urgent matter, I don't think you guys are gonna have it.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the council? Okay, I'd like to open this up to public comment, beginning with those of you who are here in City Hall. Any comments, questions? Now we'll move on to see if anybody on Zoom has their hand raised. Dana?
Not at this time.
Okay, so no comments from City Hall or anybody on Zoom. So I'll close that to public comment. And unless anybody on the council has additional comments or questions, what are the wishes of the council? Or go ahead, Keith.
I do have just so our IT provider at my office, we only have one server for hardly any computers there and stuff like that. And I mean, when I'm looking at these prices, I'm not shocked. It's all I have to say. It really comes down to it. It's a necessary evil. I think you have to have it.
Right. Okay, and what are the wishes of the council? Would anybody would entertain a motion at this time? Or staff direction?
I'll make a motion to approve the recommended project change order in the amount of $9,975 for IT services, and then it's support Margaret's recommendation of looking at it, pulling the contract, and if needed, put out an RFP for a new RFP for IT services.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call vote. Councilor White.
Aye.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Kleinfelder,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Sim,
Aye.
Mayor Ackerman.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, item 8 is council staff communications. And 8.1 is the city manager's report. Would you like to share a report with us?
I think I talked enough tonight.
I think you talked about a lot of great things.
Thank you.
Sounds like you've been more than busy. Okay, how about mayor or council members' reports?
Can we do future agenda items?
And
So we got-
future,
Okay.
future agenda items.
Okay, not, well, actually probably a whole lot for me. So I can't remember the date. I went to a board of supervisors meeting sometime in December. They were passing a resolution for, I guess it was a Memorial Day for the unhoused people who passed out or passed away because of weather conditions. I know it sounds kind of odd that I got a little upset at it because it just seemed like a resolution for a feel good for 5 people to feel good about. It didn't do nothing. It doesn't bring people back to life. You know, I definitely said, because they said, oh, this is Councilmember White from Plymouth. And I said, no, I'm not here. I'm a citizen, and brought that up. But it got me thinking about different ideas. So this goes into future agenda items. Because I do believe, I don't want to sound heartless, trust me, this is not an issue I'm heartless about, but I don't know what the status of the city of Plymouth and a no camping discussion, no camping law, no camping resolution, if that's something that we can get into.
You say camping, what are you referring to? People that are setting up camps,
Yeah. Let her say no.
that's a really,
Is that a really tricky one?
it's a tricky one, and it's a tricky public discussion.
Okay,
So there's ways we can talk about it, but those communications want to be at least from your city attorney first.
yeah, that's why I'm
Financial setting,
directing it that
before we
way.
have that kind of discussion, because that area law is constantly emerging. From pitfalls, so we gotta be careful.
Okay. Thank you on that. And then my other thing is there hours at the park? And do we have a sign over at the park? The hours? It's just another discussion that I'd like to have.
I don't think we've ever had declared hours. That's why, in the 90s, we put that giant light that looked like it lit up most of Main Street to discourage some of the late night activities.
Yeah, I mean, it just gives us it, if we go, no, this is what the hours are, then that gives us a little bit more. You know, just some thoughts I did. Thank you.
Councilmember Kleinfelder?
I attended by Zoom, the League of California Cities Regional Board meeting. They have set the schedule for the in-person quarterly meetings. And there's a League of California Cities meeting on the 19th. I don't know what our status is. There's also a Southern California, February 1st. I will continue to give you updates. What we're going to do in the in-person meetings is have speakers and dive much more deeply into subject matter. There's several issues that were discussed. I had asked that we discuss ADUs because I don't think the state, they've passed a law, only they haven't done a very good job letting the public or cities dive through it and know how it can affect your possibly be an assistance or a tool in your affordable housing element. So, but we're going to discuss a lot of things. Of course, water is one of them. It doesn't seem like it right now.
We are still
Water.
in a drought.
Water will still always be an issue in California. So, and public infrastructure will be another item of discussion. funding public infrastructure projects. So in my future agenda item, I've already provided to Margaret. She circumvented one of mine because the staffing plan included it. But I would like us to formally bring up the discussion of not mandating, but charging for on the water sewer bills, garbage service to every household. And I really do feel it's a worthy discussion.
Councilmember McLaughlin, do you have any reports or requests for future agenda items?
And nothing additional at this time. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Sim.
Yes, I'd like to bring an agenda item at a future council meeting having to do with the 49er RV park. A discussion with regards to permanent housing or permanent people living in permanently versus short-term rentals. I think that's something we really need to discuss, and that's only one part of it. But what I would mention right now is the fact that there's so many permanent units out there, and their advertising work. I like to have it, in the future, please.
And I agree with that request also as a future agenda item, as well as I'd like to have a better understanding of our permits required, and then also does our do we need to look at our municipal code to see if there's anything that needs to be addressed in the municipal code. So that's my only request for now for a future agenda item. But I do want to share that I think it was my first activity as a mayor, and I did attend the young man's Eagle Scout ceremony, and he and his mother were here at our last special meeting, but unfortunately, I didn't let them speak during public comment. But anyway, we went to the Eagle Scout ceremony, and it was the first time I've been to one. It was really nice, and it just seems like a great young man with a bright future and an asset to our community. That's all I have.
Can I add on to a little bit of that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Feel good.
Yeah.
So, since he was about that tall, so that was a real cool thing to know what even though he didn't get to speak, I kind of knew what was going on. I was like, makes me feel old. I was his 4-H leader and all that stuff. Very fortunate in our little section of our, I consider Middletown part of us when it comes to the Boy Scouting program. We've had a lot of Eagle Scouts in our area, and that's a big accomplishment. So I just think that's just really cool that, I mean, I'm sure everyone knows Colton here in town, even though Colton's only 17, he's got a beard like he's 55, yeah, I just proud of those kids. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else, anybody? Okay, well, the meeting